Welcome to the Infuse Compassion Podcast, hosted by me, Amy Quesenberry.
And me, Mark Carpenter.
We are on a mission to make this world a kinder place for us all by bringing healthier human connection to communities, families, and organizations of all types and sizes.
Our goal is to create stronger relationships, more inspired teams, increased trust, and improved results.
So let's get started with more ways to infuse compassion into our world.
Welcome, Compassionators, to this episode of the Infuse Compassion Podcast. I am really excited for this episode. I think this will be a little bit unique for you. I am your host, Mark Carpenter, and you notice that I said host, not co-host this time, because I am flying solo as the host today because our guest today is Amy Quesenberry from Start With Compassion. We're turning the tables just a little bit here. We're shifting our focus here, where I just think people need to know what Amy's doing and how she is bringing compassion into this world. And so we are going to start with a background on Amy. And we're going to give her a chance to talk about her Start With Compassion framework and the foundational work that she's doing. So let me give you a quick introduction of Amy. With over 20 years of experience in human capital and a compelling educational degree or pedigree, including a master's in organizational leadership, Amy Quesenberry had all the training to understand optimal performance, at least on paper. But a high-stress position pushed her to the breaking point, causing her to stop and reevaluate what businesses have been getting wrong about their people power. So with new insight into what positions businesses for lasting success, she developed her now acclaimed Start With Compassion framework. Today, she introduces companies to the game-changing impact of showing up for ourselves in our work, and Amy's passion and authenticity have made her a sought-after speaker and coach worldwide. And I am just going to add to that formal introduction that's on her website, and she's just a good person. And it's just been a thrill for me to get to know Amy over the last year and a half. And she is the co-host of the Infuse Compassion podcast, the co-founder of the Infuse Compassion Into Companies conference, and a person who is bringing light and compassion to the world. Welcome as our guest today, Amy Quesenberry.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a little interesting to be in the hot seat, as they say, but it's also really exciting to be able to share my story with our compassionators. So thank you.
Amy's got a little nervous when I started rubbing my hands together in glee over being the one who's going to ask her a bunch of questions today. That I get to grill her with questions and put her in the hot seat. And so I want to jump right into it. I'd love you to give us a little bit more background, Amy, on what it was that started this journey down the Start With Compassion trail for you. We got a brief that in your bio, but tell us what was the spark and what was it that turned you in that direction of compassion as the foundation of the work that you're doing?
Yeah, it was kind of a 1-2 punch, if you will. The first piece that opened my eyes to wanting to do compassionate work, this was when I was still in corporate. This was in 2019. Okay. And I have a little dog. If you listen to our podcast regularly, my husband and I have 2 dogs, Kawali and Little Bit. But Kawali is very vocal. She's like her mother. She has a lot to say. And, but sadly, before she found us, she was in the lives of people that didn't deserve her. So she is a rescue. And she was actually chained outside in an open courtyard and left to die. The family up and moved from the home. After we don't know how many days, without food, without water, without shelter, somebody heard her crying, called a rescue, and they came and got her. Weeks later, we met Kawali and fell in love. Okay. One night, so I don't have kids. Like my husband has a son who I call my bonus son. But I've never like given birth to a child. I've never, raised a child as mom. And my babies, my dogs are my kids. They are my kids, right? Quali will lay on my chest like a baby. So one night she's laying on my chest and I'm thinking, this gentle little angel, how could anybody do this? How could anybody be so cruel to anything else in the planet? And I thought, you know what? There are people just like this shelter that are doing amazing work. They have the passion, they have the knowledge, they have the experience. What they need is money. These people need financial support and resources. That's what they need to continue to do this amazing work, to continue to do this compassionate work that is so needed, whether it's a domestic violence shelter, a food pantry, a homeless shelter, an animal rescue, whatever it is, whatever it is. Okay, we've all seen them. They need money. And so I thought, I love to bake. I'm not a professional baker, but I love to bake. And lots of people that have eaten my cookies have been like, you should sell these. So, you hear that and you're like, oh, let's go. So I actually opened this company called Koali's Cookies. And a percentage of the proceeds went to cat and dog rescues. And I loved it. In the process of baking 100 cookies at a time, I would scoop the cookie, I would make them from scratch, organic, vegan. I blew out my thumb and I actually got a trigger finger in my thumb and I had to have surgery on my thumb. So I was like, okay, well, we're done with that. And when my husband and I were talking about it, he goes, Amy, you're not a baker. It's like, what do you like? Why don't you do something that you like you're a businesswoman? Come on. And I'm like, yeah, that's a really good, like maybe stay in your wheelhouse, And not to mention the
Get back in your lane.
not to mention the price point on like a motivational talk or, you know, it's a lot bigger, right? The price point. And so I was like, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do. So that kind of gets tabled. Start with Compassion hasn't been born, but I'm like, I think there's something there. So a little bit later, I start to hear this start with compassion. And it's like a tap, tap, tap. I call it a tap, tap, tap. Like this start with compassion. I don't know where it's coming from. I don't know where it's come from. Tap, tap, tap. Meanwhile, yes, get in here.
And I just wanted to catch us up on the timing, because you talked about getting Quali in 2019. So where are we now?
We adopted Quali in November of 2019. Right now, the tap, tap, tap is happening in 2021. So we're kind of coming out of COVID, but here's what's really critical. Just before COVID hit, I moved from HR to operations. Yeah. Tough.
That's a shift.
That is a shift. That is a shift. Yeah. And I didn't realize the amount of like client focused pressure that operations has on it. Yeah. Not to mention it's COVID. Okay. And just everything. Think about you as an organization, those of you that are listening out there, all of the hoops that you had to jump through. Okay. We had to jump through that as well. I think we had like 70,000 employees that we had to, the majority of them had to go from a brick and mortar to a work from home environment. Oh, I mean, leaders were not sleeping. They were just literally like maybe an hour or two. So there was an absence of compassion just in the air, just because organizations were trying to simply survive. Can we just make it to the next day? The stakes are high. They're so high, right? So as I'm continuing with this department on this team, I'm 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 dying on the inside because I'm struggling to be successful. It's just not who I am. I'm struggling to be successful. I'm struggling to find my place. In some areas I was doing really well, like the team building events. I loved that. That was great, but I just couldn't find my place in this team. I loved the organization as a whole, but I was struggling to find my place in this team. I was crying every day. I was depressed. I would work ridiculous hours trying to get it right, and I never could get it right. No matter what I would deliver to my leadership, I just felt like such a failure, Mark. I felt like such a failure because no matter what I did, it was never good enough. And honestly, when you're not on the path that you're supposed to be on, that's what happens. When you're doing the work that you're not meant to do, that's an indicator. That is an indicator.
And there's a point that I believe a lot of our compassionators who are listening can relate to. When you're not on that path, that doing the work that you're meant to do,
Yeah.
It's miserable. You feel it every day, and even if you're not crying every day, you feel that deterioration on the inside.
Yeah.
And so this is the path that I believe there's a lot of people that are either on or have been on in their careers.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So
yeah.
take us to the next step.
Yeah. I make the very difficult decision after 14 years with this organization that had given me so much. I made the decision to leave. I didn't know where I was going to go. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't going to do that anymore. And meanwhile, tap, 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 Start with Compassion is still going on around the same time. So I actually leave the company February of 22. Okay. So that's the timeline. Just before I left, I was talking with a friend of mine that was a lawyer, and I'd given my notice, and I told her about Start with Compassion. And she said, "That's golden. You need to trademark that." And I was like, okay. So I did. I still don't know what it means. I still don't know what Start with Compassion is, but this thing keeps on knocking on my head. So I'm listening. So here I am. I've left the company. I don't know what's next. I'm not applying for work. I'm taking 3 months off, and I'm just going to focus on me. Because remember, I'm broken. I'm angry. I'm resentful. I'm lost. I'm depressed. I don't need to be anywhere but right here with me. That's what I need to do. So I sat in my backyard basically for 3 months, and I journaled, I prayed, I meditated, I drummed. I just got back to me. And in those 3 months, I created the Start with Compassion framework, which really helps you show up as your best, first by showing yourself compassion. And then that gives you the ability to show compassion to the people around you. And my whole thing with the Start with Compassion project, which I love calling it now, because this is a project to transform our world into a more compassionate place for us all. Because my thing is, imagine what it could be like to walk the planet, to live in this incredible world if we all showed up with just a little bit more compassion to ourselves and then for the people around us. Imagine the world that we could create. And that's why I'm calling it the Start with Compassion project. It's a project to transform the world, and I know we can do it.
Good. Awesome. And I actually love that framing of the Start with Compassion project. I teach all the time about personal productivity, and I make a distinction between tasks and projects. And sometimes we think of compassion as, oh, that's something I do. It's a task. But if you're trying to create compassionate people or create compassionate communities, that is a project. It is a series of steps that's going to get us there and to maintain that and to keep it going forward. So let's talk about the building blocks of that project. Share with us, when we've hinted at some of this, you've mentioned a few of these items in some of our other podcast episodes, but walk us through the Start with Compassion framework.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. So,
And by the way, I'm going to interrupt you a couple times along the way here because
okay.
it's a long acronym, and so I'm going to call out a couple of points that I want you to comment further on.
Yeah, sure. So, compassion is an acronym. Okay. C is the connection. That's the foundation. So, the connection, it's understanding that we are all connected as human beings. All right. Think about the connection that you have in the people in your world, whether it's your friend circle, your work circle, whatever it is. Okay. Your family circle. When one of you is struggling, you can feel that. That connection is real. But there's another thing here, and that is sometimes we need to know when to disconnect. And this actually is something that I learned this year just by working the framework. Sometimes we need to disconnect. But regardless of what it is, it's being mindful of the connection. What do you want to connect with? How do you want to connect with it? All right. The O is open-minded, knowing that your path looks different than my path, and that's all right. In fact, it's pretty awesome. And if I keep an open mind as I'm talking with you, engaging with you, and listen, stay curious, I'm probably going to learn a lot, right? The M is for moments. I actually have a talk that I do. It's called How You Show Up Matters. It was born in the M. It was born in the moments. See, the thing is that throughout life, we are constantly in this place of I'm in point A, and I want to get to point C. We experience this on our podcasts all the time, right? We're in A, we want to have a successful podcast. Or A is we're going to have a successful podcast. C is our goal, right? What we want to achieve is we want to have a successful podcast, right? We're going to have a podcast. We want it to be successful. A and C. Okay. B, it's what we do. It is the podcast, right?
It's where we live.
It's where we live. And I'm saying podcast. I mean the episode, right? We want to have a successful episode. So what we do, how we do it, what we say, how we say it, that's the moments. But the thing is you can't be on for every moment. So you've got to understand what moments matter most for you and what are you going to do to make sure that you're ready for those. That's what moments is about. All right, the P, this is patience and perspective. When we can be more patient with ourselves, it can help us show up with a more compassionate perspective for ourselves and the people around us. All right. A is awareness and acceptance. It's having the awareness of how am I feeling inside? And maybe we're a little frustrated. Maybe we're tense, whatever it is. But understanding, like, what am I going to do about it? Okay. How do I want to show up like this? I'm frustrated with this person across from me. And if I blow up at them, what's going to happen? Accepting how you're feeling and what are you going to do about it and going back to the moments, right? The M, and thinking, do I want the way I'm feeling to impact the result? Am I going to miss that target of C completely because of how I'm showing up? See, it's all intertwined. It's all intertwined, which brings us to the first S, which is silence the judger. Now, this is the single most critical component of the framework. All right. Because the thing is, as soon as we go into a judgmental state, either toward ourselves or toward other people, that connection that I mentioned in the beginning, it's severed. It's done. Right? You cannot be in connection, a healthy connection with another, and be in a place of judgment as well. I feel like there's a question.
There is. This is where
I know you so well.
Because I've heard you talk about silence the judger being like the most important component of it.
Yeah.
But what I heard this time was if you don't silence the judger, if you're coming from a place of judgment, you called the connection, the C, the foundation. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm hearing is the judger will erode the foundation of compassion.
That's right.
Am I hearing that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And so I love that point that if we can't get off of that foundation of judgment, the foundation beneath us starts to shake. It starts to corrode, and
Yeah.
then nothing else holds up in the framework.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, good. I just wanted to emphasize that point because I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, it can't. Like, okay, so think about it. The open-mindedness, it's done. You're in a state of judgment. You don't have an open mind, right? You're in judgment. What do you think, how you're going to think you're going to show up in that moment? If you're showing up as judgmental, right? It's done. It's done. The framework
Yeah.
crumbles. It is not sustainable in a judgmental place. So yes, thank you for emphasizing
Yep.
that. So
Okay,
here's
love
the
it.
deal.
Second S.
When you get to this place in the framework, okay, the second S, this is when things start to get really exciting, because the whole thing is this: you find yourself in a moment, right? You realize you can make a difference in the world. Maybe it's with yourself, maybe it's in something else, a project at work, a friend, whatever it is, you start to get stimulated. That's the second S. You start to think, oh my gosh, I could really make a difference in somebody else's life, in my life, whatever it is. That stimulation leads to you being interested. That's the first part of the eye. You start to get interested. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I could make a difference. And then that interest turns to you getting invested. Now you're going to work on it. You're going to spend some time. You're going to be thinking about it. And the interesting thing about the framework is it could be as simple as holding a door open for somebody, or it could be as extensive as, I'm going to put together an Infuse Compassion podcast, right? I mean, it could be big or it could be small, right? But anywhere on that spectrum, be thinking of that as I'm talking about this. You get invested, you start working toward it. That leads you to the I. You're the third part of the I, which is intentional. Your intentionality is your motor. That's what propels you forward. That's when you do whatever it is you're going to do. So picture yourself. You're sitting there. This actually happened. I'm sure it's happened to a bunch of people. You're sitting there. You're watching somebody struggle to get into a door. Maybe it's somebody who's a little bit older, somebody that for whatever reason, physically, they're struggling, their hands are full, whatever it is. And you can feel it inside. I think I want to help them. Do I want to help them? I think I want to help them. I think, yes. And then you go and you help them and they're like, thank you so much. It could be as simple as that. But you were stimulated, then you got interested, then you got invested, you physically got up and you walked over and you opened the door. Okay? That's it. It could be as simple as that. Now what happens?
So I'm seeing that intentionality, the eyes here, the interested, invested, and the intentional, as the action piece of this.
100%.
This is where I'm actually going to do something. Everything else is kind of building up inside of me.
Yes.
And now we get to the eyes, and now I'm physically doing something. Have I got that
now
right?
Now you physically do it. The I is where you do it. It's actually the intentional part of the I. Okay?
Yeah.
That leads us to the O, onward and upward. Because the thing is that when we do a good deed, right, chemicals, dopamine and oxytocin, actually start to fire off in our brain. They're good mood boosters. Well, think about the best ideas that you have. Are you in a good mood or are you in a bad mood? You're in a good mood. So think about, you want creativity, you want innovation, you want your health to improve, you want to get some great ideas, you want to transform something. You better get that dopamine and oxytocin moving, right? And so being in a positive state of mind can help all those things happen. That's the O, the onward and upward. But here's the deal. What happens if we commit to a lifestyle of starting with compassion, making intentional, compassionate actions toward ourselves and the people around us, toward the world? This is what leads us to new heights and horizons. This is where we can transform the world, because it's not a one and done, but I'm committed to making a difference. And that is my Start with Compassion framework, Mark.
And so that N is new heights.
New heights and horizons. New heights and horizons.
I just wanted to close out to make sure it was really clear what that N was at the end of that framework. Thank you. And thanks for letting me interrupt you along the way. So you've got this framework that's the Start with Compassion framework. And then you've got this Start with Compassion project.
Yeah.
And so I am seeing the framework as kind of the tools to build in this project. So what are we building? With that project, we talked about this. A project is something you build. It's multiple steps that we take. What are we building with that framework in the Start with Compassion project?
Yeah. And it's for me, it's it's a more compassionate world. It's more compassionate workplaces, it's more compassionate communities, because it's helping people use the framework. This is how I transformed my life, using this framework to help me show up as a more compassionate person. Remember, I left corporate. I was broken. I was lost. I felt like a failure. I was depressed. This framework helped to heal me. It helped to heal me by helping me prioritize what was important moments, by helping me have an open mind that, you know what, that's not the only way. There's other things that you can do by, being quiet, praying, journaling, meditating, connecting with myself, creating a community here in San Diego that I didn't have before because I was in a remote role. And my community was in countries all over the world, but not here, not in San Diego. My community was very small. Now it's huge. All of these little things transformed as a result of me working my framework. I was able to silence the judger. I was able to quiet that sometimes, oftentimes cruel voice, and just say, you know, that's just not helpful. Those words are not helpful right now. We're going to choose
Okay,
different
so
words.
Amy, as people are listening to you and they're saying, I need to get this in my life, I need to apply this. How do you help people apply this framework so that they can be part of this project of building more compassionate communities and workplaces?
Yeah, yeah. So I do online workshops. So they can find me. Well, first of all, you can find me on my website, startwithcompassion.com. All right. You can also reach out to me at amy@startwithcompassion.com. Easy, easy. I'm all over social media, but I do workshops. I do motivational talks. And I also do coaching. I do one-on-one coaching. And I use my framework, my compassionate framework, in my coaching. I have a very compassion based style of coaching. And um, one of the things that I've started doing just the last couple of months is in person workshops. I've also really made a shift to work more with women, which I've really enjoyed doing. I One of the things that we've seen throughout the world is that when women are thriving in communities, those communities are thriving, right? And it's been such an incredible journey connecting to myself, finding, because, I've said on other podcasts, the Amy that walks the planet today is not the Amy that walked the planet just a few years ago. I was, abrasive, aggressive, angry, just couldn't see past what I wanted. I just couldn't see past what I wanted. And I really struggled to be there for other people. And then now it just feels good to sit in my body and just be with me, because I'm just a much kinder person now, thanks to my framework. And so I welcome anybody that's interested, that's struggling with anything that I've shared. Pick up the phone, call me, let's talk about the framework. How can it help you just be okay with being with you? Because it's not that I was bad, it's just that I wanted to be different, nicer.
And it's really interesting because I didn't know that other Amy. And because I didn't know that other Amy, I can't even picture that other Amy. This is the only Amy I know, the one that is focused on compassion. And like I said at the beginning, that is just a good person. I love also, Amy, I've heard you say this, that the foundation for infusing compassion is yourself, is self-compassion.
Yeah.
And so that's a great foundational place that this starts from, that if you want to build compassionate workplaces, compassionate communities, you have to understand how to be compassionate to yourself as well. So The time has flown by here. We're bumping up against our 30 minutes that we like to keep within.
Yeah.
And so we've gotten your contact information. We know where to find Amy. We're going to put those in the show notes so that you have access to her. Amy, you know the last question that we always ask. What
Yeah.
and the hard thing for you is going to be narrowing it down to the one.
Yeah.
Because the question is, what is one tip that you're going to give to our compassionators that they can use this week to infuse compassion?
Yeah. To show yourself some grace. To just give yourself a break. All right? Be that friend to yourself that you want somebody else to be to you.
I love that. And I would even say be the friend to yourself that you are to other people, because we tend to be a better friend to other people than we are to ourselves in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And that's a tough place to start. Amy Quesenberry, thank you for being our guest. I look forward to our next episode where you're co-host with me again. It was like this huge burden of responsibility to be the only host in this podcast. But I've really enjoyed this opportunity. And compassionators, I hope that you've enjoyed going on a little deeper dive with Amy as well. And that you can take that Start with Compassion framework, start applying it in your life, contact Amy to go on a deeper dive with it. And let's get into that Start with Compassion project and build businesses and communities that have a foundation of compassion. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Infuse Compassion podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share a review and like the podcast so other compassionators can join us. Until next time, let's all do something each day to infuse compassion into the world. For more information on our guests, see the show notes. For more information on Mark and Amy, go to infusecompassion.com.